A healing journey into trust beyond betrayal. You're about to discover something that may alter the way you respond to betrayal, disappointment, and the hollow silence left behind after someone you loved broke your trust. Not with force, not with preaching, not even with words about forgiveness, but with something older than language and more powerful than punishment. In the next few hours, you will witness a transformation so profound that it rekindled trust in an entire village, people once shattered by deceit and silence. And yet, what may astonish you most is this: the man who healed them never once told them to let go. He never used the word forgiveness. He never told them how they should feel. Instead, he walked beside them, listened, breathed, cooked their food, sat in silence by their fire. And in doing so, he taught a truth so gentle, so disarming, that it didn't just soothe the penitent, dissolved the very identity of being betrayed. Let yourself pause now. Close your eyes. Let your breathing soften. Long inhale and a longer exhale. Feel the tension leave your shoulders as the noise of your modern world fades behind you. Feel your awareness drawing inward like the tide pulling toward a still shore. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. Now, in your mind's eye, see the world change. You are no longer in the present. You have stepped onto a dusty path in ancient India 2,500 years ago. The earth beneath your bare feet is warm, soft, and grainy like powdered clay. You hear birds you don't recognize. The sun is dipping low, casting gold and saffron hues across the sky. Jasmine grows wild by the roadside. You smell wood smoke curling from distant cook fires. Children laugh nearby. A goat bleats. Life is simple here. Yet something deep in your heart knows this isn't just a village. It's a place where something is about to awaken in you. You walk slowly along the road until you see him. A man simple, quiet, dressed in earth-toned robes. He walks with neither haste nor wariness. His posture is unburdened. The oxen pulling his cart seem unusually calm, as if they too are softened by his presence. His name is Sutta, though you don't know this yet. What you do feel instantly, unmistakably, that this man holds a kind of peace that cannot be faked, a calm that cannot be disturbed by betrayal, a presence that sees clearly without judging. You follow him without meaning to. Your feet just move, and as you walk, the scene around you begins to shift. The road curves gently ahead, and with each step, something in the air begins to shift. It's subtle, like the way the atmosphere changes before a storm. But this isn't tension. It's possibility. The man you're following, Sutta, moves with a rhythm that feels ancient, as if time itself slows to walk beside him. His oxen plod forward, their bells chiming in soft, meditative patterns that begin to steady your own heartbeat. You've never seen anyone walk like this before, as if each step is both a prayer and an answer. But something else begins to capture your attention. The closer you get to the village ahead, the more you notice what's missing. There are no children running to greet travelers, no faces peering from behind wooden shutters, no merchants singing their wares or elders offering rice and blessings to strangers on the road. Instead, there's a silence, here thick, quiet, and guarded. Not peaceful, not empty, but protective, like a village holding its breath. Woman carrying water from a far-off well, she hurries past, gripping her clay pot tightly to her chest. Nearby, a man mending his roof pauses, hammer raised. He watches the cart, his face wary. You recognize the look. It's the look of someone who's been burned by promises that didn't last. Promotions that never came. Apologies that were never sincere. This is what betrayal does. Not just to individuals, but to entire communities. It fractures trust, breaks the invisible web of belief that binds people together. You feel it in your own chest. Now that subtle tightness you learned after life taught. When your kindness has been mistaken for weakness, doesn't puff himself up to seem more trustworthy. He simply continues walking, as he is. And somehow, in a world where so many of us shift shapes to survive trying to be what others want, expect, or demand, this stillness feels radical. Peace comes from within. This is what peace looks like, not as an idea, but as a living, breathing presence. You enter the village, the silence is thicker. Here, tension lies in broken pottery scattered beside doorsteps, in whispers that float through open windows. Never again should have known too good to be true. This village has learned to doubt its own intuition, and nothing hurts quite like realizing you can't trust your own judgment. The villagers move differently, shoulders tight, eyes downcast. A mother pulls her child indoors at the sight of strangers. An old man sweeps the same patch of ground over and over again, as if caught in a loop of helplessness. You know this behavior. It's how you act when you don't want to be hurt again. Invisible walls go up. He doesn't plead for understanding, doesn't advertise his goodness. He simply lets their mistrust exist without trying to erase it. This is the first lesson. True strength is not in being seen accurately, but in remaining unchanged when others don't. You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger, the Buddha said. Sutta seems to know this. He knows that meeting suspicion with defensiveness only multiplies fear. So he chooses peace. He guides his oxen to a stop. Beside the village well, the stones of the well are worn smooth by centuries of hands. It's the place where life used to gather, where children played and elders told stories. Now it stands quiet, like a heart that doesn't know how to open anymore. And then Sutta does something astonishing. He doesn't unpack, doesn't call attention to himself, doesn't announce his wares or plead for a chance. He sits, cross-legged on the earth, hands relaxed in his lap, eyes open. But still, he just sits. In our world, where everything is performative and strategic, this is revolutionary. When was the last time you entered a tense situation and didn't try to fix it? When did you meet someone's distrust with presence, not persuasion? This is what Zen calls beginners, mind meeting each moment without agenda. You sit beside him. The stones of the well are warm beneath you. You can see the entire village square from here. A blacksmith hammers metal with too much force, anger hiding in the clang. A mother rushes her children indoors early. An elder pretends to sweep, but really, he's just keeping busy to avoid feeling helpless. This is a place aching for healing, but afraid to let it in, and yet something begins to change. A child peeks from behind a house. Watch as there is something magnetic about non-reactive presence. In Zen Buddhism, it's called non-attachment. When someone is angry, you don't have to become angry. When someone is afraid, you don't have to shrink or fight. You can simply be like a mountain and change by the weather. And in a world where everyone wants something from you, your attention, your time, your approval, Sutta wants nothing. That alone is healing. This is the second lesson. Healing begins not with fixing, but with presence. If you want to know your mind, sit in meditation, the Buddha said. But here, Sutta shows something deeper. If you want to heal a broken community, sit with them in their pain without trying to take it away. The sun lowers. Fires are lit, dinner's prepared. Her face collapses into quiet despair. Sutta rises. He walks to her not with urgency, but with reverence. Broken pieces and says, "These pieces, perhaps they are ready to become something new." The woman doesn't speak, but you can see it in her eyes softening. A wondering not a miracle, but a beginning. This is the third lesson. Transformation doesn't come from pretending the breaking didn't happen. It comes from honoring what was broken and letting it become something new. As Sutta returns to the well, more eyes watch, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. This merchant doesn't behave like merchants are supposed to. He seems to want nothing, and in wanting nothing, he gives everything. The stars begin to appear. Soon someone will speak, someone will step forward, and something will open, but not because Sutta forced it, because he waited. because he let them come, because he trusted that truth does not need defending and you sitting in the golden dusk realized something too. You can live this way. You can meet hard moments without hardness. Your stillness will remind someone else that peace is still possible, not as an escape, but as a return. The third morning, awakening the human spirit, the third morning doesn't just arrive, it emerges. Not like a clock striking a scheduled hour, but like a breath exhaled after generations of holding it in. It slips in on the hush of dawn, not heralded by crowing roosters, but by something far more delicate and enduring, the harmonious murmur of human voices. Already gathering at the well, you wake not from obligation or habit, but from a pull deeper than sleep, more ancient than memory. It's as if the soul of the village itself has stirred, and in its stirring, called each person home. No blaring announcement marks this day. Instead, the air has shifted in texture from brittle disconnection to something tender, living, pulsing. With care. Where once the morning was a series of tasks and duties, now it feels sacred. You walk to the village square, each step weighted with reverence, and the transformation is unmistakable. Once fragmented, this place now breathes in unison. You feel the change not just in the atmosphere, but in your own heartbeat, as if it, too, has aligned with something greater. The circle by the well. A silent revolution. You find Sutta where you last saw him by the well, but he's no longer solitary. Around him, an organic circle has blossomed, not one of customers, but of seekers. Presence is the currency here now, not bargaining. Meera is seated cross-legged nearby, shaping a small pot of clay, her brow furrowed. In gentle determination, her grandmother Kamala is guiding a younger child's fingers over strands of cloth, teaching them how to detect durability. Ananda, the woodcarver, instructs a teenager on the nuances of pressure and patience with a carving knife. There are no ceremonies here, no declarations. And yet, something divine is occurring, healing. And then, your eyes settle on Gahapati. The once boisterous merchant is now quieter, softer, seated slightly apart, yet unmistakably part of his cart, once adorned with gaudy colors and slogans, now rests under a humble canopy. Repainted in earthy tones, he leans forward, helping a young mother discern the fabric in her hands. "See here," he says, his voice lacking the boastfulness it once carried. "Tight, even weaving, that lasts years. But this," he points to another section, "this will fray after a season." There is humility in his tone, yes, but also hope that redemption is possible. Right livelihood and the alchemy of karma. What you're witnessing is a karmic pivot, the turning of the wheel. In Buddhist psychology, this is known as parivartana, the moment the energy of karma shifts from perpetuating suffering to fostering liberation. These transformations, though subtle, are seismic. The merchant, who once manipulated, is now educating. The child, who once played in silence, is now asking profound questions. And you feel your own thought patterns shifting like tectonic plates beneath a once fixed identity. You recall times in your own life when you could have clung to old patterns but didn't. Moments when you chose patience over impulse, generosity over envy, trust over suspicion. They didn't feel earth-shattering then, but looking back, you see they altered the landscape of your future. The Buddha once taught that just as a pot is filled drop by drop, so too is wisdom accumulated in small, deliberate moments. This is such a moment. Arrival of the sage, Sariputta joins. The Circle A figure appears on the village path, clad in plain robes, walking with deliberate serenity. Those familiar with such presence recognize him instantly. Foremost disciple, revered not only for his immense intellect, but for his boundless compassion. He does not announce his arrival, nor does he demand reverence. He simply steps into the circle, taking a place among the villagers like any other traveler. Sutta bows. "Venerable sir," he murmurs. Sariputta waves the formality away. I am only a fellow seeker. I heard stories of a place where trade is rooted in trust. I came to see if such a thing was true. His eyes scanned the gathering, taking in the connections formed, the learning exchanged, the healing in motion. He nods, satisfied. I see that it is. What follows is not a sermon, but presence. Sariputta listens, observes, attunes. This is right mindfulness in action, the ability to see reality without needing to manipulate it. How often do we try to accelerate our growth, to demand healing before its season has arrived? Here, Sariputta reminds us, healing is not a fire to be stoked, but a garden to be tended. The seed within, teaching the Dharma through a stone amira, looks up from her pot. "Venerable Sir," she asks in her clear, small voice, "is it true what the Buddha says that everyone can become enlightened?" Sariputta smiles. He picks up a stone. "This looks solid," he begins, "but it is not. It's a field of tiny particles, constantly in motion, just like us. We appear fixed, but inside we are flowing experiences, realizing this is the start of liberation." As the words settle into the hush around the well, you feel a deep uncoiling in your chest. How much effort goes into maintaining the illusion of being something static, the reliable worker, the good child, the successful adult? What if you allowed yourself to be more like that stone fluid, changeable, evolving? The moment doesn't demand anything from you. It simply invites you to see atonement and choice. Gahapati's question Gapati stands. "I have lied," he says. "I have cheated and caused suffering. Can someone like me truly change?" Sariputta looks at him with unshakable compassion. "You cannot undo your past, but you can choose your future. Every moment is a seed. Water it well." The words settle not as condemnation, but as liberation. Your past isn't a prison, but a forge. What you make now is up to you. Wisdom from Kamala, the middle. Way of trust told, Kamala rises. When Gahapati first came, I felt something break inside me. I doubted not just him, but my entire way of living. Was kindness foolish? Was trust a weakness? She pauses. The silence is heavy, reverent. But watching this transformation, I've remembered. One liar does not disprove truth. One betrayal does not make trust foolish. The Buddha taught the middle way, not blind trust, but not hardened suspicion either. We can remain kind and discerning. Sariputta nods. This is wisdom not read from scriptures, but carved into the body by experience. You reflect on your own moments of betrayal, times when you retreated behind walls. What if the answer isn't to harden, but to hone? Visitors arrive. A movement begins. A new group enters the square. Merchants from nearby villages, drawn by the whispers of transformation. They come not to trade, but to observe. Sumana, their leader, speaks cautiously. We heard stories of a village where trust and trade walk hand in hand. Forgive me if I find it hard to believe. Before Sudha can respond, Mira stands. Holding her lopsided pot, she says, "It's true. Not because we're perfect, but because we're honest about our imperfections." The village nods. Gahapati steps forward. "I wronged them. I lied. But they've shown me another way. I vow to spend the next year teaching others how to protect themselves. From the tricks I once used." Sumana watches in silence, her skepticism melting into something softer. The merchants are no longer merely visitors. They are witnesses, and slowly, participants. Confession and response. A moment of redemption. One woman from Sumana's group approaches Gahapati. 3 seasons ago, a merchant sold us fake oil lamps. I think it was you. Gahapati doesn't flinch. It was, and I am sorry. Her face is a battleground of emotions. Anger, hurt, disbelief. Then something shifts. I came here to demand repayment, but I don't know what to do with my anger now. Sariputta speaks gently. Anger protected you. But now that you've arrived at a place of healing, something else becomes possible. Not because you must let go, but because something more interesting is calling. From healing to movement, the birth of right community as night falls. The two groups mingle. Plans emerge to teach honest trade, to protect villages, to seed trust. What was once a fractured community has become a movement, not led by force, but by example. Suta whispers to Sariputta, I gave them nothing new, only space to remember their own wisdom. Sariputta smiles. And what greater teaching is there than that? The deepest teaching, you were never broken. The stars emerge. The village breathes. There is no final pronouncement, no sacred closing, just presence. You'll lie down under the sky and realize the story isn't over. It has just become yours. The Buddha said that one day with a wise teacher surpasses 1,000 days of study. Today, you were both student and teacher. Today, you didn't just witness a transformation, you became part of it. And as your eyes close, one truth lingers. Healing is possible. Trust is rebuildable. Transformation is not a miracle. It is a choice repeated with love, over and over again. The final lesson, the Buddha's arrival. The fourth day arrives not with fanfare, but with the quiet confidence of a truth that has taken root. You wake to find the village transformed in ways that go deeper than what the eye can see. The physical arrangements remain the same clay houses, the same well, the same dusty paths. But something fundamental has shifted in the space between people. Where once there was careful distance, now there's natural closeness. Where once there was guarded speech, now there's easy laughter. You're witnessing what the Buddha called the middle way made manifest not the absence of caution, but the presence of wisdom. As you approach the well, you find Sutta in conversation with Sariputta. Their voices carry the particular quality that emerges when deep wisdom meets deeper experience. The remarkable thing Sariputta is saying is how naturally it all unfolded. No sermons were preached, no rules imposed. You simply embodied the Dharma and let others recognize it in themselves. Sutta nods thoughtfully. The Buddha taught that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. But I've learned that the reverse is also true. What you become shapes what others think is possible. He gestures toward the village, where people go about their morning tasks with ease that wasn't there before. They didn't need to learn new teachings. They needed to remember old truths covered over by fear. You feel this wisdom soaking into your own being like water soaking into dry earth. How often do you forget that your way of being in the world teaches others what is possible? That your anxiety gives others permission to be anxious, while your calm offers them a path to peace? That your authenticity invites their honesty? The most profound teaching isn't what you say, but how you show up. Not the advice you give, but the example you live. Not the problems you solve for others, but the peace you maintain within yourself. A small commotion draws your attention to the village entrance. A figure approaches on foot, walking with the distinctive gait of someone who has traveled very far. As he gets closer, you recognize the unmistakable presence of the Buddha himself, not announced by fanfare or attendance, but moving with the simple dignity of someone who needs no introduction. His arrival creates a ripple of recognition, the village but not the frantic excitement you might expect. Instead, there is a quality of natural reverence, like people recognizing the source of teachings. They have been living without knowing it. The Buddha approaches the well with his usual unhurried pace. His eyes take in this mixed group of villagers and merchants, the children learning alongside elders, the former deceiver now teaching discernment. I heard there was a village here where the Dharma was being lived rather than merely discussed, he says, with the gentle humor of one who delights in truth found in unexpected places. Sariputta bows respectfully. Teacher, this merchant has created something remarkable. He has shown how the principles you teach can transform not just individuals, but entire communities. The Buddha looks at Sutta with eyes that seem to see through time itself. And what have you learned from this experience? The question isn't a test, but a genuine curiosity about what wisdom has emerged from practice. Sutta considers carefully before responding. I've learned that healing happens in relationship, that trust isn't rebuilt through words, but through consistent actions, that transformation is contagious when it's authentic. He pauses, gathering his thoughts. But most importantly, I've learned that people don't need to be taught wisdom. They need space to remember it. The Buddha nods with approval. This is why I teach the middle way, he explains to the gathered circle, not because it is a compromise between extremes, but because it recognizes that truth lies in balance between trust and caution, between forgiveness and accountability, between individual healing and community wholeness. His voice carries the authority of someone who has tested these teachings, not just in theory, but in the sciences of real human relationships. You think about your own life, the ways you've swung between extremes, times when you were too trusting and got hurt, times when you were too guarded and missed connections, times when you focused so much on individual growth that you forgot the power of community, times when you tried to fix others while neglecting your own path. The middle way isn't a lukewarm compromise. It's the dynamic balance point where wisdom and compassion dance together. Hapati approaches the Buddha with visible nerves. Blessed one, he says, his voice trembling. I've done terrible things. I've caused suffering through my greed and deception. Is redemption really possible for someone like me? The Buddha responds without hesitation. If someone truly understands the suffering they've caused and commits to preventing such suffering in the future, then yes, transformation is not only possible, it is inevitable. He looks directly at Gahapati, his eyes holding no judgment, only clarity. The question isn't whether you deserve forgiveness. The question is whether you're willing to do the work of making amends, not just saying sorry, but living differently. This teaching cuts through one of humanity's deepest wounds, the belief that past mistakes define future possibilities. You recognize that voice in your own head, the one that says you're not worthy of love because of what you've done, not capable of change because of how you've been, not deserving of peace because of the pain you've caused. But the Buddha offers something more radical than forgiveness. He offers transformation, not erasing the past, but learning from it so completely that it becomes wisdom, not pretending you never caused harm, but committing to preventing future harm. A young woman from the merchants group raises her hand. Blessed one, how do we take what we've learned here back to our own communities? How do we create this kind of transformation in places where people are still hurt and suspicious? The Buddha smiles. You begin exactly where you are. You don't wait for others to change first. You don't demand perfect conditions. He picks up a small stone from beside the well. This stone cannot make the whole earth solid, but it can provide stable ground for one footstep. Your practice of honesty cannot make everyone truthful, but it can provide reliable ground for those ready to trust again. He sets the stone down. Gently, the Buddha taught that hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. This doesn't mean becoming passive in the face of harm. It means responding to harm with wisdom instead of reactivity, meeting deception with discernment, not cynicism, approaching betrayal with healing, not revenge. You feel this resonate with your own relational history. The coworker who takes credit, the friend who gossips, the partner who lies. In each case, the same choice presents itself: to replicate the harm or to interrupt it with something wiser. Mira, who has been quietly listening, tugs on the Buddha's robe. Why do people hurt each other if it makes everyone sad? The Buddha kneels beside her, taking her question as seriously as he would a senior monk. People hurt others because they are hurting inside, he explains. When someone is angry or afraid or sad, that pain spills out like a cup that's too full. He draws in the dust with his finger. But when people learn to heal their own pain, they stop spilling it. They become like wells that offer clean water instead of cups that overflow with bitterness. The simplicity of this image strikes you deeply. It reframes how you see the harmful actions of others, not as proof of their badness, but as evidence of unhealed pain. As the morning wears on, the Buddha continues engaging with villagers and merchants alike. He listens to their stories, their fears, their triumphs, not as a distant sage, but as a deeply present friend. He delights in hearing how the Dharma has taken root not through study, but through lived experience. This is why I teach that the Sanghatha community of practice is one of the three jewels, he tells the group. Individual awakening is precious, but collective awakening transforms the world. This reframes your own journey. Growth isn't just a private endeavor. Awakening contributes to the whole. Your healing ripples outward. As the Buddha prepares to leave, Sutta steps forward. "Teacher," he says, "I understand now that my role here was temporary. This village has remembered how to heal. But what about other places? How do we reach them?" The Buddha replies, "You don't reach them. You become so transformed that transformation spreads naturally through your presence. The Dharma finds fertile ground when the conditions are right. Your job isn't to convert the world, it's to embody truth. This releases a burden you didn't know you carried the pressure to change others. What if your greatest gift is your own transformation? What if influence flows from presence, not persuasion?" As he takes his leave, the Buddha turns back one last time. Remember that what you've experienced here isn't an ending, but the beginning of countless new stories. You will face moments when fear returns, when cynicism tempts you, when pain urges you to close your heart. In those moments, remember this well. Remember this community. Remember that healing is possible, that trust can be rebuilt, that even the deepest wounds can become wisdom. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive diligently. With that, he walks down the path, leaving behind a community not just transformed, but awakened, and within you, a deeper truth begins to settle. Not as an idea, but as a knowing. Healing is your birthright. Wisdom is your nature. The departure trust rebuilt here the sun sets on the fourth day with colors you've never seen before. The same golden light that illuminated Sutta's arrival now bathes his preparations for departure. Yet, where his coming was marked by curiosity and caution, his leaving is wrapped in gratitude and quiet celebration. You stand at the edge of the village square, watching as people gather not to say goodbye, but to offer blessings for the journey. Ahead, Sutta's cart looks different now, still simple, still honest, but somehow fuller, despite carrying fewer goods. These are expressions of connection. Mira's carefully wrapped clay lamp. These are transmissions, love, made tangible, community-made, portable. Not really leaving, old Kamala observes, her eyes fixed on Sutta as he secures his belongings. How can you leave when you've become part of who we are? Her words carry the wisdom of someone who understands that true connection transcends presence, the Buddha once said. Thousands of candles can be lit from a single flame. And what you've witnessed here is that lighting really are, beneath their fear. You think of the people who've impacted your life, who reflected your own capacity for kindness and growth, who believed in your potential even when you'd forgotten it. Their presence lives on in your choices, your behavior, your self-expectations. Their influence expands, not diminishes. With time and distance, Gahapati approaches Sutta, holding something carefully in his hands, a small wooden sign, simply carved, beautifully finished, so people will know what kind of merchant you are. More than gratitude, it carries meaning. It's something you build daily, slowly, through choices that align with truth. He looks at Gahapati, not with judgment, but with recognition. Your own sign will read the same someday, he says, when you're ready to claim that truth. Gahapati eyes well with tears. I'm making my own cart, he admits, planning to travel the merchant routes. It won't be easy, but I've learned that running from mistakes only makes them heavier. Better to turn around and transform them into medicine for others. This conversation reveals a powerful truth about redemption. It isn't about being excused or absolved. It's about facing what you've done so completely that you become incapable of doing it again, about becoming a protector of others, born from the very capacity you once had to harm. The regrets that haunt you. What if you stopped hiding from them? What if you turned them into teachings, offerings of wisdom for others walking the same path? As the last rays of sunlight fade, the village gathers around the well in a natural, unscripted circle. No one organizes the moment. It simply happens. Sariputta speaks first. Not because it was miraculous, but because it was so utterly natural. This is how healing is supposed to happen. This is what the Dharma looks like when lived, not lectured. Mira rises next. I thought if I asked the wrong thing, people would get mad. But I learned that questions aren't scary when people answer them with truth, and that trust isn't something you give or take. It's something you build, like making a pot on the wheel, echoing profound wisdom. You see in her the next generation children who will grow up believing that curiosity is welcome, that vulnerability is strength, that community is possible. The Buddha taught what we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow. Tonight, this truth lives in the circle, in every villager, every child, every story that will be told of this moment. There's something I need to say, he begins. When I arrived, I thought I was here to help you recover from betrayal. But you were never broken, only temporarily disconnected from your own wisdom. My role wasn't to fix you, it was to create the space for you to remember. He looks into every face. But remember, this moment, remember that choosing to trust isn't naive, it's courageous. That believing in people isn't foolish, it's wise. That healing is possible, not because people are perfect, but because people can change. His words strike deep. How often you forget this? How quickly pain turns to cynicism. Disappointment becomes generalization. One mistake feels like your entire identity. But now, something new grows inside you. A quiet resolve to remember the truth beyond the pain. That one person's betrayal doesn't define all people. That a failed attempt doesn't invalidate the next. Suta climbs onto his cart and something beautiful happens. Without prompting, a simple melody rising from shared hearts. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings live in peace. Their voices weave together like a tapestry, one of trust, memory, and hope. You find yourself singing too, your voice part of the whole. The cart begins to roll, slowly at first, then gaining rhythm, but Suta's presence doesn't grow smaller with distance, the village's soul. The oxen's bells chime softly, merging with crickets and wind, until you can no longer tell the sound of departure from the sound of home. You remain standing by the well long after the cart vanishes into twilight. To end. You walk with them, listening to plans for tomorrow, for harvest, for festivals, life returning to rhythm, but forever changed. Eventually, you find yourself alone, sitting where Sutta sat, the stone still warm, and here, something sacred rises within you. Not because the place is holy, but because the experience was, because what unfolded here was deeply naturally human. The Buddha taught that in the end, you realize these are not separate questions. Letting go creates space for love. You think of your life, your relationships, your work, your community. What might shift if you carried this wisdom back with you? What if you became like Sutta, not perfect, but authentic, not flawless, but committed? The night deepens. But instead of feeling alone, you feel connected. To this village, to the other villages waiting for healing, to every person who's sleep, not to escape but to prepare. And when you wake, that healing is always possible. That trust can be rebuilt. That love is stronger than fear. That you are the merchant of truth in your own life, trading in the only currency that matters: authentic presence, conscious choice, and the infinite capacity of the human heart to turn suffering into joy. You follow Sutta into a small village nestled in a cradle of hills. The homes are made of clay, the roads, beaten earth. The people, cautious. Suspicion lies thick in the air, like smoke from an untended fire. Children play, but only when watched. Merchants speak in lowered tones. Neighbors offer half smiles and closed doors. You learn what happened here. A merchant came through some months ago, spoke with honeyed words, promised trade, fairness, prosperity, and then vanished, taking with him every ounce of grain, gold, and trust. The village had no one speaks his name anymore. They call him the Taker. Since then, the village has changed. Walls built higher, eyes narrowed, hearts closed, and now Sutta walks through their gates. Another merchant, another cart. The villagers stiffen. Children stop their games. Dogs bark without reason. It's as if the land itself holds its breath. But Sutta doesn't flinch. He simply bows his head, offers no defense, and sets up his small cloth at the corner of the market. He places a few humble items on it: clay cups, threadbare scarves, small bundles of herbs. No one buys. You are standing barefoot on a dusty road in ancient India. The sky above blazes with the fire of a setting sun, casting long golden shadows across your path. The air is thick with the fragrance of jasmine and wood smoke, and ahead of you, walking slowly yet purposefully, is a man pulling a small wooden cart. His name is Sutta, though you do not know it yet. He walks with no rush. He carries no urgency. You notice how even the oxen walking beside him seem unbothered by the heat, their pace steady and unforced. You're drawn to him, not by charisma, not by force, but by something subtler. Presence. As you walk behind him, you feel your own pace begin to slow. The chatter in your mind quiets. The betrayals, the heartbreaks, the wounds you thought you'd buried long ago, they begin to stir, not with pain, but with curiosity. Who is this man, and why does it feel like your soul already knows him? On the first day, Sutta speaks to no one. He smiles when smiled at. He bows when greeted, and when ignored, he remains peaceful. Children inch closer. They whisper. He's strange, they say. He doesn't shout prices. He doesn't praise. His goods, Kamala, an older woman with arms like tree trunks and eyes like wells, watches him from a distance. Her bread stand is 2 stalls away. On the second day, she offers him a piece of bread. He accepts it with both hands. "This is the softest strength I've ever tasted," he says. Kamala frowns, confused, but she doesn't walk away that night. You see her telling others, "He didn't try to sell me anything," she says. "He thanked me like I gave him a kingdom." And slowly, the ice begins to melt, not because he argued, not because he defended, but because he listened. By the 4th day, Sutta's presence has begun to alter the air. People still carry pain, but now they carry curiosity too. They start asking questions, not about his goods, about him. "Where are you from?" He shrugs. "I have walked many roads." "Why are your prices so low?" He smiles. "Because my goods carry no tax of fear." A child named Mira tugs his tunic. "So what do you sell?" He kneels. "Whatever helps others remember their strength." And then he offers her a clay lamp. "It's broken," she says. "Yes," he agrees. "But when you light it, it still gives light." That's the kind of broken I trust. A monk named Sariputra arrives on the 7th day. He has heard whispers of a merchant changing hearts without doctrine, without scripture. He watches Sutta, sees the villagers gathered, sees the former enemies sharing stories. "You have taught them without teaching," Sariputra says. Sutta nods. "The Buddha said, 'What you think you become, but what you become teaches others what is possible.'" "But they were betrayed," the monk says. "They hurt." "Yes," says Sutta, "and that's why they listened." Pain is a doorway, not a destination. One morning, a man with a limp and a cloak of shame walks into the village. It is him, the Taker. The villagers freeze. Rage bubbles, children run to parents. Kamala clenches her fists. Sutta steps forward. Before judgment, he says, "Let us listen." The man falls to his knees. "I was starving," he says. "My wife dying. I chose survival over soul, and I have lived with ghosts since." Kamala does not forgive. Not yet, but she listens. And that is the miracle, not forgiveness. Not absolution, but space for truth to breathe. When Sutta leaves the village, his cart is light, but it carries more than ever before. Mira's lamp, Kamala's bread, a sign made by Gahabati. The former taker, honest goods, patient heart, trust, rebuilt here. You changed us, says Mira, says Sutta. You remembered yourselves. And then he vanishes down the road. His oxen slow and sure, his cart creaking like a lullaby. Back in your world, you wake up, but you are not the same. The story of Sutta stays with you. Next time someone lies, betrays, or disappoints you, pause. You don't preach, you don't react, you breathe, and you remember. Zen is not a way to escape life. It's a way to be fully present in it, to meet pain with wisdom, to meet betrayal with boundaries that still allow healing to meet the world, not with fear, but with clarity. You are now the merchant of truth, and the cart you pull is your life. Let it carry only what helps others remember who they are. Let your presence become the lesson. Let your reaction become the transformation, and know that wherever you go, trust can be rebuilt, even in the ruins, even in the silence, even in you. Betrayal is among the deepest wounds a human heart can endure. It stings not just because of the act itself, but because it originates from someone we trusted, a friend who turned their back, a partner who broke their promise, a family member who deceived us, or even a stranger whose lies impacted our well-being. The pain runs deep, not just because of what was done, but because of what it shatters, the sacred bridge of trust. This story begins not in a palace or a battlefield, but on a dusty road leading to a small village in ancient India. The villagers of Sundarpur were once a thriving and peaceful community, known far and wide for their honesty and unity. But all that changed one fateful season. A merchant, suave and persuasive, came into their lives. He offered rare spices, silk, and metals at prices too good to refuse. At first, his generosity seemed genuine. He stayed with them, joined their festivals, played with their children, and even helped repair their broken well. But underneath the smile was a scheme. His goods were fake. His measures were rigged. His affection was strategic. When the truth surfaced, it tore through Sundarpur like wildfire. The merchant had vanished by then, leaving behind empty purses and broken spirits. The elders fought. The youth grew disillusioned. Neighbor no longer trusted neighbor. Suspicion became the new language. The wound was not just economic, it was spiritual. It was in this climate that another merchant arrived, pulling a simple ox cart, traveling alone. His name was Sutta. The villagers, burned once, were in no mood to welcome another traitor. But this man was different. He didn't sell, he listened. He didn't boast, he asked. Sutta arrived with no grand entrance. His ox cart creaked as it rolled into the village square. He set up near the well, but did not call for attention. He did not announce his wares. Instead, he sat under the Bodhi tree, pulled out a wooden flute, and played a melody that was neither joyful nor sad, but profoundly still. Children gathered first, then elders pretending to be uninterested. Eventually, the entire village paused. He played every evening. In the day, he spoke to whoever came. Not about trade, but about truth. One evening, Kamala, the village bread maker, asked, "Why are you here? Really?" Sutta smiled. To sell goods, of course, but more so, to trade suffering for understanding. Kamala scoffed. "We have enough suffering. Understanding won't fill our bellies." "No," Sutta replied gently, "but it might fill your hearts." Word spread of the strange merchant who spoke like a sage. The village priest grew wary. The blacksmith stayed away, but those with unspoken pain found their way to the Bodhi tree. Sutta never preached. He told stories. About a prince who gave up his palace, about a woman who carried water up a mountain for 30 years, about a blind monk who saw clearer than King's Dot. In every tale was a whisper of the Dharma, the universal truth. "Why don't you sell anything?" a child named Mira asked. "Because what I offer can't be bought." On the seventh night, Sutta told them the story of Angulimala bandit who murdered hundreds but was transformed by a single meeting with the Buddha. The village was silent. Everyone had heard of betrayal, but few had heard of redemption. He explained the teachings. Anicca, everything changes. Dukkha, suffering is part of life. Unicca, there is no permanent self. He said, the man who betrayed you has gone, but his shadow remains because you feed it with fear. Should we forgive him? Someone asked. Forgiveness is not the goal, Sutta said. Understanding is. When you see his deception as a reflection of his ignorance, not your worth, you become free. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was what they needed. Sutta taught them about matb, loving kindness, about sati, mindfulness, about kshanti, patience. He did not hand them a solution. He held up a mirror, and slowly they began to look. The village had a tradition of evening festivals. It had stopped after the betrayal. Sutta asked, why let him take your joy too? They resisted. But Mira, the child who never stopped asking questions, started lighting lamps again. One night, the villagers gathered near the well. Kamala brought bread. Ananda played the drum. And Sutta, as always, played his flute. There were no speeches, no declarations, just people being together. Laughing again, listening again. Trust was not rebuilt with words. It returned with presence. The Buddha once said, just as a snake sheds its skin, we must shed our past over and over again. The village didn't forget what happened, but they stopped making it the center of every interaction. They stopped punishing the present for the crimes of the past. One dawn Sutta packed his cart. Mira ran to him. Where are you going? To the next village, he said. Their wounds are waiting too. Will you come back? I never really leave, he smiled. The villagers gathered. Kahapati, who once led the chase against the first merchant, stepped forward with a carved sign. It read, Merchant of Truth. No wares, just wisdom. Trust rebuilt here. Sutta bowed. Before leaving, he offered one last teaching. You will be betrayed. Again, not by the same man, but by life, by expectations, by people who act from their wounds. When it happens, pause, breathe. Don't rush to blame or bury. Instead, remember this. Pain is not punishment. It is a teacher. Betrayal is not the end. It is the beginning of deeper truth. The ox cart moved slowly. The bell on its side chimed gently, like a final flute note. The village watched in silence, but their silence was different now. It was full. Every journey toward healing begins with a wound. Ours begins in a village carved from the sun-scorched soil of ancient India, where betrayal once ran deeper than the wells that nourished the land. This was not betrayal between enemies, but among neighbors, friends, and even family, the kind that leaves no visible scars, yet silently reshapes lives. In the center of the village stood a cracked stone well, dry and abandoned. It had once been the gathering place for laughter, stories, and shared burdens. But trust had evaporated, and with it, the water. Each person walked alone now. Words were weighed with suspicion. Smiles were drawn tight over guarded hearts. Then came a traveler, a merchant with no name on his cart and no boast on his tongue. He arrived not with goods, but with presence, not with doctrine, but with curiosity. He called himself Sutta, and though he claimed no title, he carried teachings older than the village itself, teachings that would become the village's redemption. This is the story of how truth was traded for deception, and then back again, of how Zen Buddhism does not erase pain, but transforms it, of how betrayal does not break us unless we forget who we really are. Chapter 1. The merchant arrives. The morning Sutta arrived. The air was still, almost suspiciously so. Dust clung to the air like breath held too long. The only sound was the creaking of wooden wheels and the soft chime of small brass bells strung across the neck of his ox. He didn't shout his wares. He didn't barter or beg. Instead, he parked his cart beneath the banyan tree in the village square and simply waited. Children peeked from behind stone walls. Elders muttered from shaded porches. No one approached, but the ox did something unusual. It sat now. Any farmer would tell you an ox only lies down when it knows it has arrived. The first to approach was a girl named Mira, not yet of marrying age, but already weighed down by the heaviness of adult silence. Her father had once been accused of dishonesty in the village market, and though the charges were never proven, no one trusted them anymore. She walked up to Sutta and asked, "What do you sell, merchant?" He replied, "Only what is already yours." Confused, she left, but the question stayed. Chapter 2. A village of Woundsby for Sutta. The village had been a place of whispered accusations. Goods went missing, promises were broken, husbands betrayed wives, and brothers betrayed brothers. The pain was never addressed directly, only buried beneath pleasantries and avoidance. Sutta did not try to uncover secrets. He simply listened to the old woman Kamala, who had not spoken to her neighbor in 5 years, to the blacksmith Gahapati, whose former apprentice had stolen from him, to the headman Surin, whose leadership had once been unquestioned, but who now ruled through fear. Every evening, Sutta built a fire by the well. He invited anyone who wanted to sit. "I have no answers," he would say, "but I have questions that might show you where yours are buried." And slowly they came, one by one, with silence at first, then stories, then tears. Zen Buddhism teaches that the beginning of transformation is not understanding, but honesty. To sit with what is, not to solve it, not to justify it, just to face it. Sutta called this the first trade, trading silence for truth. 3. The 3 poisons. "Why do people betray?" Mira asked one night. Sutta answered by drawing 3 circles in the dust: greed, hatred, and delusion. "The 3 poisons," he said. "We betray others when we believe something outside us will make us whole." He looked up at the fire, letting its glow deepen the shadows on his face. But these poisons don't begin in the moment of betrayal. They live long before, in fear of not having enough, not being safe. Gahapati, the blacksmith, who had once struck his apprentice in anger, asked, "Then how do we protect ourselves from betrayal?" "You can't," Sutta said gently. "You can only see it more clearly, react less blindly, transform more wisely." Zen Buddhism doesn't promise protection. It offers presence. When betrayal comes, as it always will in some form, your job is not to control it, but to choose your response. This was the second trade, trading fear for awareness. Chapter 4. Mirror in the mud. One morning, the well overflowed. No one could explain it. It had been dry for months. Yet now, clear water gushed over the edges. The villagers gathered, marveling. Sutta said nothing. He merely walked to the well, dipped a bowl into it, and drank. Then he handed the bowl to Mira. "When you clean the mirror of the heart," he said, "the waters of trust return." Gahapati scoffed. "So what? Magic?" "No," Sutta smiled. Reflection Zen teaches that all phenomena arise from mind. Betrayal is not only what others do, it is how we interpret, internalize, and carry it. The villagers began to share openly about what others did, but about how they had responded, where they had closed, where they had assumed, where they had mirrored hurt with more hurt. This was the third trade, trading blame for reflection. Chapter 5. The still point there came. A day when Sutta announced he would leave, the villagers protested. "You have to stay," Kamala said. "You've made us better." "I didn't make you anything," Sutta replied. "I only helped you see what was already there." He walked with Gahapati one last time. "How do I know I won't betray someone again?" The blacksmith asked. Sutta paused. "You don't, but you can choose, moment by moment, to act from clarity instead of fear. To pause before speaking, to breathe before reacting. To return to the still point within, Zen calls this mindfulness, but Sutta called it the fourth trade, trading reactivity for intention. Chapter 6. The return months passed. Sutta's departure did not break the spell, it deepened the roots. The villagers kept gathering by the well. They told stories of when they failed to live up to the new trust and how they returned to it. Mira, now older, taught younger children the four trades. Kamala baked for both friends and former enemies. Even Surin the headman relinquished his grip on fear-driven authority. One night, as the fire crackled by the now singing well, Mira said, "I used to think betrayal was the end of something. Now I see it as the beginning." And so the village became a place where wounds were not hidden but held, where betrayal did not end trust but refined it, where truth was not a doctrine but a daily choice. Sutta was never seen again, but his teachings lived on. Epilogue, the fifth. Trade years later, Mira, now a grown woman with children of her own, was asked by a visiting monk, "What did the merchant truly sell?" She answered, "He traded in what cannot be bought, in presences, not possessions, in courage, not comfort, in awareness, not answers." He showed us the fifth trade, trading suffering for wisdom, and she pointed to the well, still flowing. "This is not a miracle," she said. "It is a memory of who we really are when we stop forgetting." The golden light that once illuminated Sutta's hesitant arrival now bathes his peaceful preparations for departure. His presence was once a question mark, now it's an exclamation point, a living affirmation of what is possible when trust is rebuilt, where his arrival was met with cautious eyes and whispered suspicions. His departure is greeted with reverence. There is no fanfare, no ceremony orchestrated by duty or expectation. Instead, people gather with a quiet kind of celebration. Their smiles are not born of obligation, but of genuine gratitude. Their eyes filled not with sorrow, but with respect. Sutta's cart looks different now. Once a simple, weather-worn vehicle of commerce, it has transformed into a symbol of spiritual wealth. There are fewer goods than before, yet it feels heavier, fuller. What it carries now cannot be measured in coins or weighed in scales. Mira's clay lamp rests nestled in fabric. Ananda's walking stick, once a tool, now a relic. Kamala has gifted bread baked not just with flour, but with intention. Each gift is an extension of the giver, a piece of their story interwoven with his dot. These are not transactions, these are transmissions. Love made tangible, community made portable, as Sutta secures the last bundle to his cart. The quiet hum of village voices rises like a hymn. Gahapati, once the village's deceiver, steps forward with something held reverently in his hands, a wooden sign. Simple, hand-carved, and beautifully smoothed at the edges. "For your cart," Gahapati says, his voice trembling with sincerity, "so people will know what kind of merchant you are." The sign reads, "Honest goods, fair prices, patient service." But underneath, in smaller letters, are four words that silence even the birds. "Trust rebuilt here." Sutta accepts the sign, not just with his hands, but with his heart. His eyes shine with tears that don't fall. "This is perfect," he says. Quietly then, for the first time in days, he speaks not only to Gahapati, but to all who have gathered. Trust, he says, isn't something you start with. It's something you build. Slowly, repeatedly, gently, like water smoothing stone. He looks to Gahapati. "When you're ready to believe it for yourself," Gahapati nods. The weight of his past no longer shackled to shame, but used now as a foundation for his journey. "I'm making my own cart," he says, planning to travel. Teach people how to recognize dishonest merchants. Not to shame, but to guide, because I've learned here. Running from your mistakes only makes them heavier. Kamala, with flour still dusting her apron, steps forward. "You've changed this village," she says to Sutta. "But more than that, You reminded us who we've always been. We just forgot. The Buddha taught that healing does not begin with answers, but with space, the sacred space where truth can emerge naturally. Sutta never lectured. He never judged. He simply lived in alignment with what he believed. And that quiet conviction became a mirror. A circle of reflection as the villagers form a natural circle near the well where it all began. Zaraputra, who has watched silently through these days, now raises his voice. What we witnessed here, he says, wasn't a miracle. It was natural. This is how healing is supposed to happen. No punishments, no exiles, just honesty, courage, and time. Mira, the child who once hid behind others, steps into the circle, holding her tiny clay hands together. Before the merchant came, I was afraid to ask questions, I thought. If I asked the wrong thing, people would be mad. But now, I know questions help truth grow. Her innocence is not childish, it's sacred. She speaks the essence of Zen itself. That truth isn't something we master, but something we uncover moment by moment, like the petals of a lotus unfolding in the mud. The sky deepens to twilight. Sutta steps into the center, offering his final words. When I came here, I thought I was here to help, but it turns out I was here to remember. To remember that people are not broken, they are buried. Buried beneath fear, shame, and stories not their own. My role was never to fix you. It was to be present long enough for you to remember yourselves. He turns to the children. You will face betrayal again. This I do not hide. But remember, betrayal is not the end. It's a beginning of deeper discernment, wiser boundaries, and a heart that learns to stay open without being naive. The path forward that night, the villagers do not sleep early. They stay together in small groups, talking under stars that shine just a little brighter. Plans are made not for defense, but for continuity. Kamala will teach Mira to bake. Gahapati will build his cart. The well will be repainted with the word Saka, truth. You walk to the edge of the village alone and sit beneath the Bodhi tree that Sutta often sat under. You feel the weight of what you've seen, not heavy, but grounding. The Buddha once said, 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And now, you feel that truth shining in you. Sutta's cart rolls away before sunrise, but his presence never leaves. Epilogue. The well of memory years pass, new children are born, new merchants come and go, but the village is different. It is not perfect. There are still mistakes, still moments of mistrust, but there is also something rare, the memory of healing. Not the fantasy of never being hurt, but the reality of learning how to love wisely again and again. Pilgrims begin to visit, drawn not by legends, but by a feeling, by stories passed through generations of a man who carried no title, but changed everything with presence alone. And by the well, now a place of reflection, etched in stone, are the words. Here, truth was lived. Before healing came, there was hurt. The village of Sundergram was once known for its harmony. Neighbors shared grain during droughts. Elders passed down stories by moonlight, and children chased dreams as freely as they chased fireflies. But that was before the deception, before a single seed of betrayal grew roots and split the soil beneath them. It began with trade. A merchant named Gahapati arrived with a silver tongue and silken wares. He promised prosperity, abundance, and alliances with distant lands. For a time, the village flourished. New goods, new crops, new connections. Until one morning, he vanished, taking with him not only their savings, but their trust in one another. Neighbors turned inward. Accusations flew like arrows in the marketplace. Suspicion wedged itself into every interaction. Trust, once as natural as breathing, now felt foreign and dangerous. People still spoke, but their words carried caution. They still gathered, but with invisible walls between them. The well in the center of town, once the heart of daily life, grew quiet. They weren't broken, but they were deeply disconnected. Chapter 2. The Silent Arrival. The day Sutta entered Sundergram. There were no trumpets, No fanfare, just dust kicked up by tired oxen and the gentle creak of an old cart. His goods were modest, a few bolts of cloth, some clay bowls, dried herbs, and fragrant oils. Children were the first to notice him, not because of what he carried, but because of how he moved, slowly, deliberately, as if every step was an act of reverence. The elders watched with narrowed eyes. Was this another Gahapati in disguise? A new illusion in humble robes? But Sutta said little. He asked for water, paid for his space by the banyan tree, and sat quietly. He listened more than he spoke, helped more than he bartered. When people approached with stories of grief, he offered no advice, just presence. It unnerved them and intrigued them. What kind of merchant didn't sell his goods first? Chapter 3. A new kind of trade by the second week. A strange thing had begun. Villagers returned to the banyan tree not just to buy oil or spice, but to speak. A farmer confessed he hadn't slept since Gahapati disappeared. A widow admitted she no longer trusted her instincts. A teenage girl said, in a whisper, "I don't think I'll ever believe anyone again." Sutta never interrupted, he never corrected. But he reflected, sometimes with a nod, sometimes with silence. And sometimes with stories from distant lands about trust and betrayal, about kings and beggars, about monks and thieves. His cart became more than a stall, it became a sanctuary. People still bought his goods, but more importantly, they began offering stories in exchange. Grief was given voice, shame was met with stillness. Rage was not condemned, but understood. And slowly, ever so gently, a strange thing happened. People began to trust again. Not blindly, but bravely. Chapter 4. The turning of the wheel one morning. Under the same banyan tree, a young boy named Jiva approached Sutta with a question. "Why didn't you run from us like the other merchant?" "You knew we didn't trust anyone," Sutta smiled. "I didn't come to be trusted. I came to trust." The words confused the boy. But later, when he repeated them to his mother, her eyes filled with tears. Sutta's presence had planted seeds. Farmers began helping each other with harvests again. Elders resumed their evening stories. The well that had stood in silence now echoed with laughter and gentle debate. No one declared forgiveness. No rituals were performed. And yet, the village was healing. Because Sutta hadn't tried to teach Dharma, he had lived it, and that made all the difference. Chapter 5. Gahapati returns on a moonless night. The impossible happened. Gahapati returned not with guards or treasures, but with torn clothes, sunken eyes, and a trembling voice. "I was wrong," he said at the village square. "I took your trust and turned it into gold. Then the gold turned to dust, and I turned to shame." Some shouted, others walked away, but Sutta stood beside him not as an advocate, but as a witness. "Don't owe us words, Kamala," the baker finally said. "You owe us proof." And so Gahapati stayed. He rebuilt fences, he worked the fields, he sat with the children he once ignored. It wasn't quick, it wasn't easy, but it was real, and the village, watching his actions not as apologies, began, ever so slowly, to let him back in. Chapter 6. The final gift. Sutta announced his departure without ceremony. "I've stayed long," he said, "but you no longer need me." "No," said little Mira, "we do." But Sutta smiled. "No, you remember now." They packed his cart with bread, herbs, and tokens of gratitude. Gahapati handed him a carved sign. Honest goods, patient, presence, trust, rebuilt here. Before he left, Sutta sat by the well one final time. Villagers gathered around, quiet as the stars emerged. He spoke not of doctrine or dogma, but of choice. "Every betrayal is an invitation," he said. "To close, or to open, to hide, or to be seen, to armor up, or to love more skillfully." The Buddha taught that hatred never ends. Hatred only love can do that. But it's not passive love. It's disciplined. It's discerning. It's a love that knows boundaries and speaks truth. He paused. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering who you are beneath the wound. And then he left. Chapter 7. Legacy. In the dust years past, children grew up never knowing a village without trust. Travelers came and went, carrying tales of a place where betrayal once reigned and now compassion flourished. Some said the village had been blessed by a saint, others said it was just luck. But the villagers knew the truth. Sutta wasn't a savior, he was a mirror, a presence, a merchant who dealt in the rarest commodity of all, authentic being, and what he offered wasn't sold, it was remembered. Final. Chapter. You are the merchant. Noun. The story returns to you. You who have been betrayed, you who carry the weight of broken promises, you who have shut doors to protect your heart. Listen, you don't need to forget to forgive. You don't need To trust blindly, to trust again, you only need to be honest and whole. Let your presence be your offering. Let your example be your teaching. Let your own healing be the well from which others drink. You are the new merchant of truth, not one who sells it, but one who embodies it. And somewhere on a dusty road, in a quiet heart, another story begins. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not the peaceful kind that rests gently over a sleeping village, but the heavy, strained kind that presses into your chest like a forgotten burden. It's the silence of words unspoken of neighbors, no longer greeting each other at dawn, of laughter that used to echo through alleyways, now reduced to a distant memory. This is Sundergram. Once it was a place where trust flowed as freely as water from its central well. Children ran barefoot through the dust, chasing paper kites and stories of flying gods. Elders sat beneath banyan trees, weaving tales with wisdom and warmth. The smell of roasting grain, of turmeric and sandalwood, clung to the air like a constant lullaby. But that was before the betrayal, before everything changed. Narrator's voice let me take you back to a time when Sundergram was still whole, and then show you how it began to fall apart. It started, as many tragedies do, not with war or famine, but with promise. A man came to the village, a merchant. His name was Gahapati, and his words were golden. He spoke of spices from the southern coasts, of silk woven by the moonlight, of trade routes that led to prosperity. He was charming, confident, and convincing. He didn't just sell goods, he sold dreams, and the village bought them all. They pooled their savings, their hopes, their trust, handed it to him, believing he was the key to a brighter future. He spoke of a partnership, a network of trade, a bridge to the wider world. And for a while, it seemed like he was right. New goods arrived, festivals were grander, even the children played with toys they'd never seen before. But one morning, as the sun stretched its first golden fingers across the fields, Gahapati was gone. His cart, empty, his promises. Dust. The village treasury vanished. So too was something deeper trust. And that, dear listener, was the true theft. Seen a week after the Betrayal, the village square, once bustling with barter and banter, stood still. Old men argued about who should have seen the signs. Young men sharpened blades not for war, but for some ill-defined revenge that would never come. Women who once shared herbs and stories now closed their doors tight. The children, they stopped running. Sundergram didn't fall apart with screams. It collapsed in whispers. One neighbor stopped lending a hand. Another stopped offering salt. People began to protect themselves, not with weapons, but with silence and suspicion. The well, once the beating heart of the village, began to run dry, not of water, but of presence. Fewer came to draw from it. Some believed it had become cursed. Others just couldn't bear to face each other there. Betrayal, you see, doesn't just wound, it divides. It doesn't just break trust, it corrodes memory. It rewrites even the past in bitter ink. Now, every kindness Gahapati once showed seemed fake. Every warning that was once ignored became fuel for resentment. Friendships wilted. Faith, fractured, the very soil felt heavier. Voice of Kamala, the elder woman, I don't know what's worse, Kamala murmured one evening, sitting alone outside her hut, grinding turmeric by hand, that he lied, or that we let him. And just like that, a seed of shame began to sprout. Shame is a quiet predator. It doesn't roar, it whispers. You should have known better. It tells communities that their generosity is foolish. It teaches children that asking questions is dangerous. It convinces people that trust is a luxury only the naive can afford. And in Sundergram, shame had taken root, a symbol of the Fracturagapati. Had done more than steal gold. He had stolen something sacred. The innocent belief that people mean well, and perhaps, in the beginning, the villagers would have healed naturally, given time. But time doesn't always heal. Sometimes it's calcifies. Old friends became strangers. Families stopped visiting each other's festivals. The banyan tree, once the center of public life, now stood alone, its sprawling roots, a metaphor for connections lost underground and through it all. One question haunted every heart. How do you ever trust again, when the one you trusted most turned out to be the deceiver? No one had the answer, and no one dared to ask. A story unspoken, there's a boy named Arun who stopped speaking altogether. He was the one who helped Gahapati feed his oxen. The merchant gave him coins, sometimes shiny ones with intricate designs. Arun showed them to the other kids, proud. Now he buries them in the earth near the well. Each coin, a memory he no longer wants. His mother tried to make him speak. She offered sweets, then threatened to burn the coins if he didn't explain what was wrong. He said nothing, because how do you tell someone you feel complicit in a betrayal you didn't understand? The ripple effect betrayal never stops at one person. It spreads, it stains. One woman, Priya, whose husband invested the most, began to speak of leaving the village altogether. Maybe trust can't be rebuilt. Maybe it's better to start fresh, she said. But her daughter, Mira, just 7, held her hand and whispered, "But then, who will teach the well to sing again?" She didn't understand everything, but she understood one thing. Healing must happen where the hurt began. Asterisk now. Take a breath. Let your mind settle in the dust of Sundagram's pain. Let your heart ache for the villagers for what they lost, and for the silence that replaced what once was vibrant and alive. But also know this. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. For every village that has fractured, there is still the possibility of wholeness, and sometimes all it takes is one presence to remind people of who they really are. Someone not to preach or punish, but to listen, to see, to reflect. That presence is coming, but not yet. First, we must sit in the reality of the wound, because without understanding the depth of the hurt, we cannot understand the power of the healing, and without seeing how far they had fallen, we cannot appreciate the miracle of how high they would soon rise. The merchant of truth is not here yet, but his shadow approaches, and when he arrives, everything will change. Dust dances. Just beyond the last house of Sundagram, a slow, deliberate cart rolls into view. The wheels creak, but not with complaint rather, like old drums resuming a sacred rhythm. The oxen move steadily, their hooves pressing into the dry earth with a tempo as ancient as trust itself. A bell tied loosely to the neck of one animal chimes with every step, marking time like a heartbeat returning after long silence. At first, no one notices. After all, travelers pass through from time. 2 times some ignored, others avoided. Sundagram has not been a welcoming place lately. Its warmth had turned inward, like a house that draws the curtains not to sleep, but to forget the world outside. But today, something is different. He is different. The man walking beside the cart wears simple robes, nothing ornate, nothing that begs for recognition. His hands rest easily on the yoke. His gaze, unhurried, unafraid, unreadable. His name is Sutath, though no one knows it yet, and what he carries is not goods. It is presence. It is space. It is silence. So profound it begins to dissolve the static that has choked the village for weeks. Seeing the first glance, the first to see him is Mira, the same child who once asked her mother who would teach the well to sing again. Crouched near the roadside, drawing figures in the dirt with a stick. She hears the bell first, then lifts her head. For a moment, she just watches. No words, no fear, just curiosity. And Suda sees her too. He doesn't wave, doesn't smile with the practiced charm of a merchant. He simply nods. And that's enough. She doesn't run inside. She stays. And thus, the first layer of the village's armor loosens not through any strategy, but through a moment of mutual recognition. Seen, no proclamations. No promises. Sutta does not shout about his arrival. He does not announce prices or push his cart to the center square. He simply finds a shaded spot near the old banyan tree, the one that used to be the pulse of the village, and parks his cart beside it. There, he waits. He unrolls a mat. He sits cross-legged on it, and he does. Nothing, not in laziness, but in intention. His stillness is not passive, it is active listening, the kind that hears more than words. People peek through shutters. Children tug on the edge of their mother's saris. The elders murmur, "Another merchant. What now?" But unlike Gahapati, Sutta brings no song, no sales pitch, no dance of illusion, only space. And that, in a village full of scars, is the strangest offering of all. Narrator's voice. Sutta had learned something. Long ago, something not taught in schools or scriptures, but in suffering itself, that the first thing a broken place needs is not a solution, but safety, not advice, not doctrine, just a presence strong enough to withstand its silence. And so he sits. 1 day, 2 days, 3. He tends his oxen. He sweeps the dust from beneath his cart each morning. He shares his bread with birds, and each evening he lights a small clay lamp. Nothing Moran places it on the corner of his mat. He doesn't speak first, but he's always listening, and that makes all the difference. Seeing cracks in the wall on the second evening, Ananda, the woodcarver, walks by with firewood stacked on his shoulder. He slows just a little as he passes. Sutta meets his gaze. "Your wood is cured well," Sutta says quietly. Ananda stops. No one has complimented his work in weeks, not since the betrayal. He nods stiffly. Dry season, easier to store. Sutta smiles softly, still takes patience. Ananda says nothing, but the next day, a small, smooth branch is left beside Sutta's mat. No note, just an offering. On the third morning, Kamala, the village elder, walks a little slower than usual past the banyan tree. Her basket of herbs leans heavy to one side. Sutta stands and silently takes the basket, helping her carry it the rest of the way to her porch. He says nothing, neither does she. But later that afternoon, a roll of turmeric-dyed cloth appears neatly folded beside his cart. Another layer falls. Away. Trust isn't being demanded, it's being invited. Seen, the well revisited on the 4th day. As the sky burns orange with the light of a forgiving sun, Sutta walks deliberately to the well. It's the heart of the village, and the deepest wound. Since the betrayal, it has become the symbol of what was lost. But Sutta does not bless it, does not call for attention. He simply draws a bucket of water and washes his feet. Then he sits beside it and waits. By midday, 2 children approach. They don't ask for stories, they ask for water. He nods, fills their cups. "Thank you, uncle." They say, "You're welcome," he replies. And with those words, the well breathes again. It doesn't sing not yet, but it exhales. Voice of the village elder, Kamala that night. Kamala speaks to her daughter. "There's something different about him," she says. Her daughter scoffs. "He's a merchant. They all seem kind until they're not." Kamala shakes her head. "No, the last one filled the air with honey. This one he empties the air. And in that emptiness, I hear myself again." Her daughter doesn't understand, not yet, but her mother does. She knows the difference between manipulation and mirrored stillness. One controls you, the other reveals you, the unspoken wisdom. Sutta, you see, is not just a man of goods, he is a student of Zen. Not by robe or rank, but by living question. He knows the Buddha's words. Silence is an answer to. When the student is ready, the teacher appears but says little, and so he teaches. Without teaching, by being. By seeing, by letting others see themselves. Again, in the reflection of his calm, is shifting. You can feel it in the wind, in the way the oxen sleep easier, in the way the banyan tree no longer seems lonely. Trust is not back, but it has peeked through the window. It has cracked the door, because someone dared to arrive, silently. without armor or argument, without promises or pride, just presence, just breath, just the reminder that not everyone comes to take. Some come to witness, some come to serve, some come to hold a mirror, so others can remember who they were before fear. So here we are, day 4. The village still fractured, still cautious, but no longer closed. They don't know Suta's name, but they know his rhythm, and rhythm is the first music a wounded soul remembers. Tomorrow, perhaps, someone will sit beside him, not because they want to buy something, but because they want to be something again, and Suta will not say much. He won't need to, because healing, when allowed, speaks in its own language, not of sermons, but of stillness, not of answers, but of acknowledgement, not of loud trust, but of quiet remembering. The merchant of truth has arrived silently, and truth, like water, does not need to shout to change the shape of what it touches. The sun rises slow and quiet. There is no trumpet, no rooster's cry today. Only the sound of wheels turning, not the wheels of a cart, but the wheels of thought, the turning of hearts. It is the 5th day since the merchant's silent arrival, and something in Sundergram is ... different. Still, subtle, still unnamed, but palpable, like dew that clings to your skin before you even notice your wet scene. The first exchange that morning, Suta unrolls his mat by the banyan tree again, but today, something breaks the pattern. A young boy hurries approaches with cautious steps. His hands shake, not with fear, but with memory. The last merchant had promised him a new slate for school in exchange for his father's prized carving tools. The slate never came. The tools never returned, and neither did the boy's trust. But here he is now, standing in front of the silent man. I have questions, Hari says. Suta lifts his eyes. That's how new trades begin, he replies, not with goods, but with truth. Seen conversations in the shade soon, others follow. Ananda, the woodcarver, sits beside Suta and places a half-carved bowl in his lap. I haven't touched this since the last betrayal, he confesses. The wood didn't feel honest anymore, like it absorbed my shame. Suta runs his fingers across the grain. Then, softly, wood remembers shape, but it also remembers potential. No advice, no correction, just recognition. And somehow, that is enough for Ananda to pick up his tools again the next morning. Seen Kamala's offering that afternoon. Kamala arrives with a small pouch of dried neem leaves. A gift, she says, for your oxen. But Suta sees more than a pouch. He sees a moment, so he invites her to sit. I don't give easily, she admits. I know, he says. That's what makes this a true offering. She studies him, then finally asks, why? Are you here? He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he picks up a small pebble and rolls it between his fingers. Most merchants bring something to sell, he says. I bring something to see. Kamala frowns. To see? Yes, he says. What remains when everything you believed in falls apart. Seeing a different kind of marketplace that evening. A strange thing happens. The village square fills not with buyers and sellers, but with storytellers. Each person brings something to offer. But instead of haggling over price, they speak of meaning. Ananda brings his finished bowl and places it at Suta's feet. For someone who will eat from it with gratitude, he says, Kamala places a bundle of herbs beside it, for whoever needs to sleep without nightmares. Hari brings a poem he has written, scribbled on a leaf. For someone who feels too small to speak, there is no marketplace, and yet everything is being exchanged, because this is a new kind of trade, a trade of wounds for wisdom, of silence, for song. A fear for community. Scene. Gahapati's returns. The fireflies begin to blink through the dusk. A figure appears at the edge of the square. Gahapati, the man whose betrayal began it all. He walks like someone who forgot how, with eyes that avoid faces and hands that have forgotten kindness. The square falls quiet. A beat then another. And then Sutta stands. He walks to Ghapatinat with anger, not with judgment, but with stillness, the kind that doesn't push away or pull in, but simply makes room. "Why are you here?" someone whispers. Gahapati hears it. He answers, "Because I've come to give back what I took." Everyone watches as he kneels and opens his satchel dot inside. Small, carved signs, each bearing the name of a person he once cheated. "I made these," he says, voice shaking, "not as repayment, but as a reminder of who you were before I made you doubt yourselves." Sutta steps forward and lifts one of the signs. It reads, "Truth lives here, seen." The real currency later that night, as the village gathers once more, by the well, Mira, the little girl who first welcomed Sutta sex. "Uncle, are you a monk?" Sutta chuckles. "No, just a traveler." "Then why don't you sell anything?" "I do," he says. "I just trade in different currency." "What kind?" He looks around the circle, eyes soft. Presence, listening, stillness. The kind of things that people forget have value until they're needed most. The villagers fall silent, not because they are confused, but because they understand. In a world obsessed with gaining, Sutta is a reminder of what it means to offer, to witness, to return. Scene, Sariputta speaks finally. Sariputta, the monk who has watched everything unfold from the margins, speaks. He steps forward and lifts a hand, not to bless, but to point. "Truth," he says, "is not something you find. It is something you remember." He looks at the villagers. "Learn to trust again because of Sutta's words. You did it because he made it safe to remember who you are underneath your wounds." Then he turns to Sutta. "You've sold nothing, and yet you've restored everything." The marketplace of the heart that night. Beneath the moon's gentle gaze, the village becomes a marketplace. Once more, but not of goods, of stories, of offerings, of new beginnings. Someone leaves a pot of stew near the banyan tree with a note. For the next traveler who doesn't ask for anything but brings everything. Another leaves sandals with worn soles patched with care, to remind you that even tired paths have value. A child leaves a broken toy to be fixed, not thrown away. The trade continues day after day, not in gold or grain, but in healing, in presence, in love. Asterisk. This is not commerce. This is communion. This is not charity. This is courage. This is not about Sutta. It never was. It's about a village, remembering its worth. A people reclaiming their ability to discern truth from lies. A community learning to trade. Their fear for faith, their silence for song, their pain for possibility. The cart still rests by the banyan tree, but Sutta's real trade has already been made. And everyone in Sundargram has walked away richer than before, because when trust becomes the currency, everyone leaves wealthy. The wheel has been still for generations, not the wheel of the ox cart, nor the wheel of commerce, but something older, the wheel of Dharmath, the sacred wheel of truth and transformation. And today, in the heart of Sundargram, something unseen begins. To move, it doesn't creak, it doesn't roar. It begins instead with a question, one that no one expected, and yet, once asked, could never again be ignored. Seen the circle at dawn. The villagers are gathered early, not for trade, not for prayer, but because something in the air won't let them sleep. The banyan tree stretches its arms to the sky as if it, too, is reaching for clarity. Sutta is already there, sitting cross-legged, silent. Mera, the wide-eyed girl with the questions of an old soul, sits across from him. She looks at him for a long while, as children do, not just with eyes, but with curiosity that holds no fear. Finally, she speaks, not loudly, not timidly, just honestly. "Sutta, if truth is always there, why do people lie?" Seeing silence before question falls like a stone into still water. There is no answer at first, only silence, not the kind that avoids, but the kind that listens. A few villagers shift uncomfortably. Gahapati lowers his eyes. Kamala folds. Her hands in her lap. Suta doesn't flinch. He lets the silence. Stretch lets it. Build a sacred container around the moment. Then, with voice like wind through leaves, he replies, "Because we forget that we are enough." Mira tilts her head. "What do you mean?" Suta picks up a pebble and holds it to the sunlight. This stone doesn't pretend to be gold. It doesn't hide its cracks. It is completely what it is. He sets it down. When people lie, it's not always to deceive. Sometimes it's to protect an image, a fear, a story. He meets her eyes. But all lies begin the moment we stop trusting that the truth of who we are is enough. Seen, the mirror of memory. The question lingers in the air long after it's answered, because it's not just about lies. It's about identity, about the selves we create to earn love, avoid shame, or feel safe. Gahapati, the man who once deceived everyone, finally speaks. "I didn't lie for gain," he says. "Not at first. I lied because I thought if people knew who I really was, they'd turn away." He clenches his fists. "So I became someone else." Ananda nods slowly. "And I stopped trusting because I believed no one could be true," Kamala adds, "and I clung to bitterness, pretending it was strength, but it was fear." One by one, the villagers reveal not just their actions, but the reasons behind them. And as they speak, something profound occurs. The wheel begins to turn. Not outside, inside, seen the turning. Begins. Suta listens, then draws a circle in the dirt. "This is the Dharma wheel," he explains. "It turns not through force, but through understanding." He marks the circle with 8 points. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. These aren't rules, he says. They are invitations to live in alignment, to stop spinning in fear, to move in harmony with life. He looks around the circle. Today, the wheel has turned, because instead of hiding, we've begun to see I seen. The return of the Pottere figure enters the square. The village potter who had vanished after his wares were stolen and blamed on him, his return is met with a wave of emotion. He speaks through tears. "I didn't leave because I was guilty," he says. "I left because I thought no one would believe the truth." Suta walks to him. He doesn't say, "Welcome back." He says, "The wheel turned while you were gone, but it was waiting for you." Devaka smiles through pain. "I still don't know if I can trust them." Suta nods. "You don't have to. Just begin by being trustworthy." Seen Zen in the ordinary in the days that follow. Something subtle but powerful takes root. People begin to live differently, not dramatically, but intentionally. Kamala starts leaving fresh herbs at strangers' doors, no longer guarding her. Knowledge. Hari teaches younger children how to read by tracing letters in the dirt. Gahapati carves new signs, each one bearing a single word. Enough. And Suta continues sitting. He rarely gives advice. He simply becomes the still point around which transformation spirals. Seen. The real question late one evening, as stars blink through the night sky, Mira asks him another question. "Suta, will the wheel stop turning again?" He watches the sky. "No," he says, "but some will forget it's moving." What do we do then? We remind them, gently, through how we live. Mira considers this. Then she smiles. "I think I want to be a reminder." Suta touches her shoulder. "You already are." Closing the Kachapet tour, this is the moment when a village becomes more than a collection of homes. It becomes a mandala, sacred circle of shared truth. This is when Dharma stops being theory and becomes breath. When Buddhism ceases to be philosophy and becomes practice, not in temples, but in kitchens, in streets, in conversations, in forgiveness given without being asked for. This is the moment the village doesn't just trust Suta. They trust themselves again, because the wheel has turned, and now they remember they were always enough. Scene: the morning before the parting, the day begins unlike any other. No bells, no market stalls, no smoke rising from hearths. Instead, silence. As if the village itself is holding its breath, it is the morning Sutta is set to return only for a dabi for departing forever. He'd sent word by a traveling monk, not asking for ceremony or attention, only saying, "I have one final gift to offer. Meet me by the well." Nothing more, but everyone comes. Children with their curious eyes, elders with quiet dignity. Gahapati, freshly returned from his travels, carrying nothing but dust and stories. And Mirahu now walks not with uncertainty, but purpose. They gather at the well once more, the place where trust had been lost and then remade, and as the golden light spills across the square, Sutta arrives not as a teacher, not as a guide, but as a friend. He carries no cart, no oxen, no wares, only a simple satchel and a gentle smile. Scene: what cannot be bought sits by the well, just as he did many months ago, and motions for everyone to sit too. "I've brought no goods," he begins, "no scrolls, no teachings. Only this." He reaches into the satchel and pulls out a single folded cloth, worn, soft, faded. He unfolds it on the stone lip of the well, one by one. He places small, ordinary objects on it: a piece of cracked pottery, a river stone, smooth from years of flow, a child's broken flute, a strand of thread. Frayed at one end, a small wooden figure of a merchant. Confused glances pass between the villagers. Mandarin May leans in first. "These are the broken things," she says softly. Sutta nods. "Yes. Seen the meaning within the broken eye, have traveled through many towns," Sutta says, "and wherever I went, I collected what others discarded." He picks up the cracked pottery. This was a teacup thrown away by a woman whose husband left her. She thought it symbolized her loneliness. He picks up the river stone. This was once a stumbling rock on a path where a child fell and was mocked. He cursed it. The flute. This was made by a boy who wanted to be a musician. He played once, then gave up. The thread. Used to mend a shirt by a mother whose son never returned from war. The wooden figure, carved by someone who believed he could never be honest again. He looks at Gahapati as he says this. Gahapati bows his head. "These objects are not special because they are broken," Sutta continues. "They are sacred because someone once believed they had no more use." And then his voice softens. "But I see something different. I see truth in these things. I see life." Scene: the fire of remaking Sutta gathers dry twigs and starts a small fire beside the well. Slowly, he begins to add each object to the flames. Gasps rise from the villagers, even Gahapati, Flinches. But Sutta's eyes remain calm. "These were never meant to be kept," he says, "only witnessed." He lifts his hands over the fire, and now, transformed. As the fire burns low, he removes something from the satchel bowl. Handcrafted, etched with patterns of vines and stars. And into this bowl, he places the ashes from the fire. Then he kneels and offers the bowl to Mira. She steps forward, unsure. "What? What is this?" "A final gift," he says. "Not just from me, from everyone who thought they were beyond healing." Scene: Mira speaks the truth. Mira takes the bowl with reverence, her fingers tracing the warmth of the clay. She looks inside, not at the ashes, but at what they mean. "These are all the stories we don't talk about," she says. "The times we gave up, the parts of ourselves we threw away." She turns to the villagers, and now they're together. All of them in one place. Her voice grows stronger. "I want to keep this, not as something to display, but as something to remind us that nothing is ever truly wasted, that brokenness is not the end of the story." She looks at Sutta, tears brimming in her eyes. "You came here a stranger, and you leave as the one who taught us to see again." Scene: Sutta's final teachings, nods and rises. "There is no map for how to rebuild trust," he says, no scroll or verse, only this. He holds up his hands, empty now, presence. He turns to Gahapati. You became the teacher I never could be, not because you spoke eloquently, but because you lived honestly. He turns to Kamala. You forgave without words. He turns to Mira. And you reminded us that the youngest can sometimes carry the deepest wisdom. And then to everyone. When you are betrayed again, you will remember this. You do not rebuild trust with speeches. You rebuild it by showing up again and again. By carrying the bowl of ashes in your heart, by choosing even when it's hard to remain open. He bows, slowly, deeply, and as he straightens, he does not say goodbye. Only, may your hands always be strong enough to carry what others discard. Scene, the song without Enda Sutta walks away for the last time. The villagers do not follow. They remain seated, watching the space he leaves behind, and slowly, without prompting, a voice begins to sing. It is Mira, the same ancient chant from before. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings live in peace. Others join her, one by one. The song fills the morning, not as a farewell, but as a remembering scene. The village of light weeks later, the bowl of ashes, is placed on a stone pedestal near the well, not behind glass, not locked away, just there, present sometimes. People come to sit beside it in silence. Sometimes a child places a flower in it. Sometimes someone adds a note of regret they're not ready to say aloud, and sometimes someone just sits and weeps. No, one interrupts, because here silence is respected. Vulnerability is not weakness, and stories, even broken ones, are sacred. This village, once fractured by betrayal, now holds something unshakable, not just trust, but a way of being, a way of listening, of staying, of holding the parts others toss aside. And so, Sutta's final gift is never forgotten. Because it was never a thing, it was a way of seeing. Closing. The capita, there are gifts that cost gold, and gifts that cost time. But the final gift, the rarest of all these, the one that costs presence.suta, gave them that dot, and now they give it to each other. Every day, dot, and one day. A new stranger will arrive, carrying their own wounds, and someone, perhaps Mira, now grown, will greet them not with suspicion, but with a seat by the well, and maybe, just maybe, the story will begin again, because the fire never goes out, it only waits to be rekindled. The road into the village is as dusty as it ever was, its surface broken by cartwheels, bare feet, and the passing of time. And yet, something in the air feels different now, like the dust itself remembers stories. On this morning, another traveler approaches. He is not like Sutta, not calm, not centered. His shoulders are tense, and his eyes dart left and right, as though expecting confrontation. His name is Ravi, a small-time trader with little to his name and even less to his spirit. He has spent years deceiving others, peddling false goods, speaking honeyed words, and slipping away before his lies could catch up with him. He did not intend to come to this village. A wrong turn, a broken wheel, a tired ox. Fator. Something more precise has led him here. As he enters the village square, he expects suspicion, the kind of squinted eyes and murmurs he's received in other towns. But instead, he's greeted with nods, soft smiles. One man, standing near a bakery, even offers him water without question. Ravi blinks, confused. His instincts whisper, this is a trap. No one trusts a stranger this easily. But no trap comes, only kindness, seen. Mira's gaze. It is Mira, who watches him most closely, not with suspicion, but with recognition. Now in her late teens, she has taken a quiet leadership in the village, not with titles or declarations, but in the way the children follow her example, and the elders ask her opinion. She sees something familiar in Ravit, the tightness in his posture, the fear behind his bravado. She remembers it from another man. A long time ago, his name was Gahapati, and before him Sutta. She walks up to Ravi, hands him a small piece of fruit, and says nothing. And it is that silence, not her words, that begins to unmake him. Scene: the book of the village that night. Ravi wanders into the communal library, a humble room with scrolls, baskets of letters, and one large leather-bound book resting on a pedestal. The book of the village, it is called. It contains no official history, no royal edicts, no land records, only stories, stories of betrayal, healing, and transformation. He reads slowly, the tale of a merchant named Sutta who taught by listening, the journey of a deceiver named Gahapati who returned not to earn forgiveness, but to offer truth, the songs sung at the well, the bowl of ashes, the fire that remade what was broken, and beside each story, a space left open for the next chapter, for the one not yet written. Ravi closes the book and weeps, not from guilt, but from longing. For the first time in years, he wants to be seen not as he pretends to be, but as he really is, seen. The quiet trial the next day. Ravi returns to the square. He doesn't run, he doesn't scheme, he confesses. He tells them everything, his tricks, his cons, the villages he left with nothing but sorrow. When he finishes, the village is silent. Then Mira steps forward. "Do you want to stay?" she asks. Ravi hesitates. "I want to try." And then something astonishing happens. Gahapati, older now but no less steady, stands beside him and offers his hand. "Then begin," he says. As we all once did, seeing the circles of ash over, the next several weeks, Ravi works beside Gahapati, mending carts, polishing wood, baking bread. He makes mistakes and owns them. He falters and stays. One evening, Mira leads him to the stone pedestal by the well. The bowl of ashes still rests there. She places a stick of incense in the bowl and lights it. "This fire," she says, "has burned away many lies, but it never destroyed anyone." Ravi nods. "I want to add something." He pulls from his pouch a small scrap of parchment. On it, a single word: regret. He burns it, watches it disappear. And as the smoke rises, he finally exhales. Seen letters in the Sutta walks a road no longer marked by maps. His feet touch unfamiliar soil, but his spirit carries familiar weight. He has not returned to the village, not because he's unwelcome, but because his work is never in returning. It is in continuing. In each village he enters, he sees the same patterns: fear, protection, anger, disguised as strength. And he brings only what is needed: presence. In a fishing town, he helps rebuild a broken dock and teaches a boy to ask questions. In a mountain village, he sits with an elder who believes her life is over and reminds her that listening is also a form of giving. And everywhere he goes, he leaves behind no monument, only dust and stories. Seen the seeds they planted back in the village. A new generation rises. Children gather near the well to hear Mira speak, not as a teacher, but as a storyteller. They listen to the tale of Sutta, not as legend, but as memory. They craft clay lamps like hers and write their first questions on tiny scrolls. Some of them burn their own notes of sorrow in the ash bowl. One child writes, "I yelled at my friend. I'm sorry." Another, "I lied about breaking the cup." The bowl accepts them all and transforms them. Seen what the dust remembers years pass. Ravi becomes a teacher of trades. Gahapati opens a traveling school for young merchants. The honest exchange. Mira records every chapter of the village in the book, but insists that the final pages remain blank. For the ones who will come next, she says, in Sutta, he remains a rumor, a whisper on the wind. Some say they saw him sitting by a river, laughing with a boy who'd lost his father. Others say he was spotted in a northern town, trading a loaf of bread for a conversation. But no one knows for sure, except this: wherever truth is needed, wherever betrayal lingers like smoke, wherever someone wonders if trust can ever return, that's where the dust begins to glow again. Closing. The Kachapitiar legacy is not a monument, it is a movement. A ripple in the heart of the world, born not from power, but from presence. From people who chose honesty in the face of deception, who rebuilt trust, not through words, but through being. Who knew that truth is not always loud, but it is always real. The village was never just a place, it became a possibility. A reminder that healing is not a moment, it's a path, worn smooth by many feet, including yours. So as the sun sets once, more and dust rises from another journey. Ask yourself, what will your legacy leave in the dust? The sky above you is no longer the same sky under which Sutta first arrived. But neither are you the same person who watched him enter the village with wary curiosity. The seasons have turned, the stories have unfolded, and now the story turns. To you, you are standing where Sutta once stood at the edge of a new road. Cart beside you, heart full of something you cannot name. It's not confidence, it's not certainty, it's something deeper. A quiet knowing, a steady fire. You are the merchant now, not a trader of goods alone, but a bearer of truth, of presence, of possibility. This realization doesn't come with applause or trumpets. It arrives like dawn soft, inevitable, and full. Of light, the cart you pull your cart is not made of wood and wheels. It is made of stories, lessons, choices. It carries the wisdom of those who came before you. Sutta's patience, Gahapati's courage, Mira's questions, Kamala's bread, Saraputis' silence. But most importantly, it carries your own truth, messy, unfinished, honest. You do not pretend to be perfect. You no longer need to. Instead, you offer what is real, a presence that doesn't rush, a voice that doesn't command, a kindness that doesn't require repayment. You are no longer trying to prove anything. You are simply here to serve. To see, to walk beside, the road you walk you are not walking. Sutta's road, or Gahapati's, or Mira's. You are walking yours. It might lead through cities of noise and skepticism, through households cracked by silence, through relationships that still tremble from betrayal. But you no longer fear the cracks, because now you know light enters through them. You walk not with answers, but with presence, not with sermons, but with stories, not with rules, but with reminders. You are not the hero in everyone's tale, but you are the mirror in which they may see their own strength again. When trust is tested, there will be moments, difficult ones. Trust is broken. Again, when someone you love lies, when someone you believe in disappoints, when someone you counted on vanishes without explanation, your old self would have closed, built walls, planted flags in the country of cynicism. But now, you pause, you breathe. You remember the bowl of ashes. You remember the carved sign that read, "Trust, rebuilt here." You remember that trust is not given blindly or revoked rashly, is rebuilt with intention, again and again. And, perhaps, instead of retreating into judgment, you lean into discernment. You respond instead of react, and that is everything. When you are the one who fails, Evan, now, with all you've learned, you will fail. You will say the wrong thing. You will forget your own teachings. You will hurt someone, unintentionally or otherwise. In those moments, the most important truth must return to you. You, too, are worthy of redemption. Just as Gahapati returned, just as Sutta forgave his own ignorance, just as the village forgave each other. You don't have to be spotless to be sacred. You just have to return again and again to what matters: presence, honesty, kindness. This is the real practice. That follows you. You don't need to sit beside the village well anymore, because the well now lives in you. Wherever you go, a space for healing goes with you. It may not look like mucha quiet conversation, a moment of listening, an honest apology, a hand placed gently on someone's trembling shoulder. But in those moments, you are the well. You are the place where broken things come not to be judged, but to be held. You are the fire that transforms regret into learning. You are the silence in which others can remember who they really are, the children who watch somewhere. Whether you notice it or not, someone is watching you. A child, a friend, a partner, a colleague. They are learning from your presence, not your perfection, but your process. They see how you handle disappointment, how you treat others when no one is looking, how you soften instead of harden, how you admit when you're wrong, and through you, they begin to believe in the possibility of another way, just as you once watched Suta. Just as the village once watched you, the final offering as the road stretches ahead. You pause, you feel the weight of the cart. It is heavy, but not burdensome. It is full of meaning. You take a moment to reach into it, and you pull something out, not to sell, but to share. A small scroll, a single phrase. You are not what has happened to you. You are what you choose to become. You hand it to the next person you meet. They may not understand it today, but the seed will be planted, and that is enough. Closing words. You are the merchant now, the one who does not shout. The one who walks slowly, the one who listens deeply, the one who carries not just goods, but good. You will never be finished learning. You will never be free from the temptation of retreat. But now you know that every step forward, no matter how small, is a sacred act. You are not here to change the world. You are here to touch it, to see it, to love it, and in doing so, you change everything. The merchant of truth lives on. In your choices, in your presence, in the dust you leave behind. In the end, this was never a story about a village alone. It was a story about you, about the betrayals you've endured, the sharp words, the broken promises, the silences that echoed louder than noise, about the walls you've built, the armor you've worn, the distance you've maintained to protect what was once shattered. But this journey revealed something deeper, that within every wound lives not only pain, but potential. That every moment of suffering contains a seed of wisdom waiting to be remembered. Through the silent arrival of a merchant, through the healing of a community once torn apart, through the return of a man who once deceived, now transformed, through a child's question and a well's stillness, you have seen what trust looks like, not as a blind leap, but as a deliberate practice. You've seen that healing doesn't come from forgetting the past, but from walking through it with your eyes open, that redemption isn't handed down, it's chosen over and over again, and that wisdom is not a possession, it is a presence. You are the merchant now, not because you carry goods in a cart, but because you carry the truth in your being. And here is that truth. You are not your mistakes. You are not the betrayals you've suffered. You are not the pain that others left behind. You are the space where healing can begin. You are the well from which peace can flow. You are the quiet, unwavering presence that helps others remember who they truly are. So go forward, not to fix everyone, not to preach, not to save, but to live with such authentic presence, such quiet integrity, such unshakable compassion, that others feel safe to trust again. That broken things begin to mend around you, that your very being becomes the message. Let your footsteps leave trails not of dust, but of dignity. Let your words carry not just sound, but truth. Let your heart, once guarded, become the home that others never thought they'd find. When people ask who you are, when they wonder what you offer, you won't need a signboard or sermon. Just 3 simple words will do. Trust rebuilt here. And in that moment, you will know the true trade of your life has begun.